Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gordon Angus. I'm the Executive Director of the South African Engineers and Founders Association. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon for this afternoon's Skills Share Session on Occupational Health and Safety.
Thank you.
All right. Our host for today, as always, is communication strategist, published author, and thought leader Brad Wattridge. Hi, Brad. Hope you're well, and thanks very much for joining us once again this afternoon.
Yeah, Gordon, all good this side, Brad.
Perfect. And joining Brad this afternoon is Vanessa Thirlwell, the Technical Risk Manager at the Institute of Risk Management South Africa and owner of VT Risk Consulting. Vanessa brings extensive expertise in risk management, governance, training, and advisory services. Welcome, Vanessa. We greatly appreciate you giving us your time and expertise this afternoon.
Thank you.
Brad, if I can hand over to you, take us away with the show, please. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Gordon. So yeah, it's over to us two to chat through a little bit of health and safety. I've gone through the presentation. It's incredibly interesting. Also did a bit of research on my own, just around the history and where we're coming from, so that we can just also understand the landscape of where we are right now. I think what's quite nice is we're going to be taken through statistics, where we're sitting right now, what are the fail-safes that we can put into place, if that's the right way to say it. So yeah, absolutely quite excited about this. Yeah, I think we should get going. Are we ready? P? Are you there?
Cool, I'm ready.
Cool.
Super. Okay. Hi everybody.
Hey.
It's good to be here. And I must say, starting to linking risk management back to some health and safety, which was my sort of upbringing, was actually a great topic to start looking into. And it's a very obvious topic, but so often we sit, and I think this is the problem, is we sit with risk management as a strategic function, and health and safety is there, but it's not always incorporated into the strategic realm. So that's really what we want to have a look at today. So yeah, just getting started. I think having a look, as you rightly said, the sort of case for change and why we need to start being a bit more sort of strategic here. Looking at the foundation of the actual regulatory landscape, and there's been quite significant changes, as you may well know as well. Then we'll look at linking occupational health and safety with risk management and elevating that strategic level. Leadership and culture, which I'm sure if we were all in the room together, everyone would be nodding that it's one of our biggest challenges. And then just having a look at a couple of sort of practical items that we can start to implement in our organizations to really bring it home. So yeah, the skeptics in the room might say that not everything is preventable, but really looking at where we can actually prevent the accidents that seem to happen in the workplace. And always considering that behind every number there is that family that has been affected. And I remember in my years gone past working for BHP Billiton, we very much were go home with your two hands, that it really wasn't a regulatory requirement anymore, as it says there, but also then moving into the more proactive risk management, and for our staff at all levels to actually understand that. Yeah, look, I'm not a statistician. I can't even say the word, but it was quite interesting.
Statistician.
Yeah, I think everyone.
Vanessa, this is the blind leading the blind today with pronunciation, right?
Yeah, I'll try not to. If my English runs out, I don't have a backup. So, except for my kids' Duolingo that they're learning Spanish. But anyway. So yeah, some of our reality, the 198,000 workplace accidents per year, I think a lot, as it says there, almost 25% underreported. I think we have a lot of our lower sort of first aid injuries and things like that that are not actually reported. Our occupational diseases there being contracted, 8 workers die every month in South Africa, and obviously we'll have significant multiple fatalities that will obviously affect that stat. And then 20 billion plus claims paid since 2019 in the construction industry alone. So quite hectic stats. And as we say, there will be a lot that is not actually recorded or reported. From a global perspective there, nearly 3 million from work-related causes, nearly 400 million from non-fatal work injuries, and then 60,000 plus construction workers actually dying on the job globally. And again, you'll have some countries that are extremely robust in their health and safety regulations and compliance, where you'll have a lot of other countries that will increase that statistic quite significantly. And that, construction, they talk about it being the most deadliest sector by proportion. And I think mining will be a short, very close second there as well. And then obviously within your context, the foundry industry. But we saw the, well, I'll get to it now with the terrible incident that happened in George. But just some of the other categories there, falls from height, such a preventable issue if we've done, or preventative incident if we've done our working at heights training, our, we've got our right PPE, we've got our right restraints, etc. Struck by incidents. So if it's, just interactions, we see that a lot, construction as well as manufacturing, and in the mining sector as well, motor vehicle accidents. And I think a lot of those are also not always reported as a sort of workplace injury, because there's that, or workplace incident, because there's that sort of reporting line of, if I'm on the way to work, is it a workplace injury? If I'm on the job, if I'm in my private vehicle, etc. So I think that stat could also be probably quite underreported there. Machinery related, I think incredibly common there, and again, from lack of maintenance, not wearing our PPE appropriately, not relying, or machine guards not in place, etc. And then also the sort of real sort of human error, fairly preventable slips, trips and falls as well, that I think we can all relate to those as well. Then from a compliance perspective as well, is just how many organizations are not compliant with COIDA. I think a lot of organizations fly below the radar there. And so we then will have a lot of our workers that are exposed to hazards, not getting the right claims paid if there is a workplace injury. And I think often we have this sort of divide between management and our operational staff, where there is an understanding, or a lack of understanding at our operational levels, of what you can claim for and what you can be compensated for, versus then the sort of management and leadership levels not necessarily understanding the impact to the employee if such an accident actually happens. The significant legal liability that is a big risk there if we're not compliant. If we haven't actually registered for COIDA, that claims are then not paid. Enforcement actions as well, quite a big figure there, where we have actually got the liability and the sort of charges against employers. Reputation damage from very public incidents, and we'll get now to the incident that happened in George. So reputation damage really is something that is a very strategic risk when we start talking about the risk management side, and that we often really don't elevate it enough, and everybody will remember what these particular incidents were. And then also the business continuity risk. So we have our enterprise risk management perspective, but then from trying to be proactive in managing our issues. But then if an issue actually happens, what is the impact on our business continuity, and how do we respond to it as quickly as possible? So yeah, to what happened in George, so nearly 2 years ago, as we know, the 34 lives that were lost, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, where there was a whole lot of issues with the certification and accreditation, inspection models, technical oversight. It was a multitude of factors, approval failures, then from a sort of geological aspect with soil analysis and subsidence, and then just the non-adherence to our health and safety standards, and just weaknesses across the whole value chain. And then there was a second building collapse that occurred in December in Verulam in KZN, that with a temple being built, that also had lives there. So yeah, I don't know, Brad, at this point, sort of other experiences that people have, or other significant incidents that people might have been involved with that are worth sharing at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, Vanessa. I was just about to say, guys, we always try and push these sessions for you guys to be interactive, and just basically share if you've got any questions specifically around what Vanessa is presenting that could really help you guys get value out of the session beyond just what is being said. And also, if you've had experiences, please let us know, good or bad, so that we can also unpack that. But I honestly, being in the industry, Vanessa, we don't have enough inspectors. I think that's a big issue. We don't have enough governance drive from government. We know this. So it's really up to us to do this you mentioned it, from ensuring that we keep our businesses going. And, by being compliant, having a key understanding of health and safety in our businesses, it's not to protect us from the inspectors that may never come. It's to protect us from the greater issue. And that is staying in business, continuity, cost saving, and obviously that's that very important human life that we don't want to be responsible for that.
No, absolutely.
Because what else drives compliance? It can't be because we don't have enough compliant drive from government. So there's got to be something else that drives that. We've got to tap into that as business owners. Instead of fearing, okay, what if the inspector comes? It's got to be a different narrative, a different mindset.
Leads perfectly onto my next. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And it leads on to that next slide of the cost of inaction. From a financial perspective, the production downtime, our insurance premiums, if we are claiming, legal defense, that can be massive. And especially as our sort of operational or our staff bodies start to realize that they can actually claim for damages, and starting to become this litigious society that, if there is an issue, historically people might not have claimed, but now we know we do actually have a avenue for that. Then the indirect sort of non-financial impacts that will down the line have that financial impact, our shutdowns, our stoppages, our labor attrition, equipment damage, supply chain disruption is a massive one. And that's also when we look at the risk management realm, is having that, not actually understanding it's not only our supply chain, our sort of immediate interruption, our suppliers, our contractors, various other parties that we rely on. If they have a significant incident, it can then affect us. And I think that's often very downplayed. And then, what we're seeing globally now as well, and how what's happening in the Middle East affecting fuel availability, where I'm in the Western Cape, a lot of our the farmers in the area that I live have already started panic buying, and fuel stations have got no diesel. So there's, you know, that supply chain that's not even directly part of our own operations can have a significant impact. And then reputation. I mean, I can, talk about reputation. Every incident will have some form of reputation damage, be it from the media, from our stakeholders, from our regulators, our clients, etc. And we're in this world now, and it would have happened with the George incident and with the Verulam and any incident that happens that's in the news. We end up with all the armchair keyboard warriors that will just have all sorts of opinions, and there's no filter anymore of what people can say about your organization. So we preach this a lot in business continuity management, that make sure you get the right facts, the right statement out there, that we're not opening ourselves to rumor or any issues, because that's on social media, on comments in electronic media, people are absolutely ruthless, and because of the anonymity of being on social media, they really don't have a problem saying some quite extreme things. So I know often media platforms will actually turn off commentating or comments just because it's getting so hectic. So really understanding that reputation, it's not just about what goes in print media, it's actually what any stakeholder that's got access to a mobile device can actually say about us. And then that
but also, sorry, Vanessa,
Yeah.
also, sorry to interrupt, but also, under the reputational element, if we've posted as a business, images of, let's say, for example, us, even it's in our personal capacities as key role players in the business, and behind us, they're not observing the health and safety standards that are required in our particular business. That is kind of on record, because that's up on social media. So I think that's also something we need to be cognizant of, is, what we personally put up on social and what we personally advocate has to align with, obviously within the realms of the business you work in or that you own. You have to be kind of aware of that. It's got to be a lifestyle almost.
Brad, it's massive. And anyone who's listened to Emma Sadlier, the social media attorney, she always says, do your billboard test. If you are happy with your face, your name, and the business you work for, with what you are about to post being on a billboard on the N1, then go ahead and do it. But that must always be your sanity check, because there's incredible case studies and horror stories of people who have been writing a racist WhatsApp on an airplane, and the person next to them has taken a photo, and they lose their job. There's so much that if it's out there and it's digital, it can be shared. And we really need to just be cognizant. And it's another thing that we preach when we're doing a lot of business continuity training, is that your employees must know, don't post anything, don't say anything to anyone. Just, and hopefully everyone on this call has got a social media guideline and policy that their staff do know, not to be sharing information that's that could potentially be damaging to the business. And then also not looking after our people. So the direct impacts from a health and safety perspective. And what's really interesting, and it was great to see this, that COIDA has included PTSD and mental health as occupational diseases now. And I think that is fantastic, because when you look at mental health impacts on our workforce, suicide numbers, things like that, we really now need to be elevating mental health as well. Family and community harm as it is there, and then our morale decline as well. That's quite a significant, if we've, we all know, if we've got a poor organizational culture, we don't have this performance-driven workforce. People are just doing what they can to get by, to get their salary at the end of the month, and having this low morale. And also, if we've had a specific trauma, where there has been a fatality or a significant incident in our teams, that there is also this this impact that we have.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge.
So we have an incredibly robust legislative and regulatory framework in South Africa, and in our UMSA context, one of our significant risks in our annual risk report is that rule of law, and we just don't have a compliant culture. So we've got these wonderful frameworks, wonderful full regulatory requirements, codes. You see King 5 there as well, but we often don't comply with them. And as you said, Brad, lack of inspectors, lack of, you have to, there's so much that you have to comply with, but how well is it actually policed at the end of the day that then leads to these significant incidents happening? So I'm not going to go through all of these, and everyone is receiving the presentation anyway, but they've got their purpose. They're there as guardrails to help us with our decision making and to help us to know what is right and wrong, what we need to be attending to. But so often we have this compliance burden that we now try and take shortcuts. We try and see where the loopholes are, etc., and that can often be to the detriment of our workforce as well. So yeah, quite interesting when I was having a look and preparing for this is the amendments to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and just it's still being finalized. So hopefully that's not going to take too long, but very much focusing on stricter compliance, higher penalties for non-compliance. Often we'll have businesses that'll say, it's cheaper to actually pay the penalty than to put the certain requirements in place. I think giving a lot more authority to inspectors as well, stronger protection against retaliation, and then also this focus on psychosocial health as well. So taking that definition of danger beyond just physical injury to then sort of greater health, fatigue, etc. And as we know, fatigue is one of the biggest causes specifically of our human error type of accidents.
So Vanessa, I've got a question, and I know you mentioned at this presentation, because I see it's 32 slides thick, but I know it's going to be available to everyone to go through. It's really, really nicely done. But I've got a question around compliance and policing. So we're not effectively a policed state, like, for example, Australia would be. So compliance is really up to us as business owners or leaders to put into place, because we see the benefit of it financially, opposed to fearing being inspected and fined.
Yeah.
But there still is a reluctance to see the benefit. Is there financial benefit in being compliant, going through all of these different legislations and adhering to it and aligning our business to compliance? Is there financial benefit in it?
So again, and we'll get to the risk, the sort of where risk management and health and safety needs to start aligning, is it's such a preventative. Being compliant is an incredibly strong control to try and prevent the risks that we face. If we are compliant with our rules and regulations, then we hopefully are avoiding many of these preventable issues. As I said, the legislation gives us the guardrails, it gives us the protection, but our workforce and our leaders need to understand the why behind the compliance requirements. If we're just being told, and we see it, our respirators are on our heads, our earplugs are around our necks, our safety glasses are in our pockets because they're uncomfortable and they're hot and whatever, and if our employees are not understanding that those are all, there's reasons for why we're putting this in place, and we have to build that awareness of why we need to comply. And if you don't comply, there is a potential that you're not going to go home in the day, or you're going to be going
being
via
injured.
the hospital because you're
Yeah.
injured. So there's reasons for that. But I think so that's the sort of awareness that we need to create, and building this compliant culture, not with, you talk about the carrot and the stick. Compliance is often the stick approach, but we need to build the sort of carrot of the benefits of why we actually need
Fair
to
enough.
comply.
Yeah.
And that then is where, from the risk management perspective, being more proactive and in how we're managing our risks, and our compliance requirements just give us that control environment to help us to manage those risks. So we need to sell that benefit that if we are compliant, it will be saving us money in the long run. But so often our leadership will try and cut costs. They'll try and cut corners, and it's often areas of compliance where that will actually unfortunately happen. But we need to see it as a control, a sort of preventative control of risks happening.
So if we work better at taking our risk strategy and our health and safety and actually incorporating those two together, and seeing health and safety as a key indicator to avoid risks, potential risks, then the financial benefit comes into play, because obviously the less risks we face, the more we can be in an operative space and operating and getting things done, and eventually things will be more efficient. But in the beginning, it's a little bit of a headache, especially if you're not a compliant, prone business. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to get these things into place, and it's a lot of paperwork. I mean, I've seen the amount of paperwork that you've got to go through. So it is a bit of a ball ache in the beginning, but eventually it does get easier and more efficient as you go along. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And what's so important there is that it's not health and safety, as well as risk management, as well as business continuity and crisis management, mustn't be seen as extra initiatives. They need to be seen as part of how we operate. And it's just part of our culture, part of how we do business, part of our processes. But what happens, as you say, it's a ball ache, because we've got all these reports, we've got different formats of reporting that has to go to different audiences, but we're repeating the same information. It's overcomplicated, it's over-engineered, and it's not actually properly integrated into our organizations. So we end up seeing that there is just this, it is this burden, because it's seen as an additional initiative, and you look at the ISOs and the sort of information management system requirements, it's awful. And it's a real mood killer, because it's taking away the value from what we're actually trying to achieve from a proactive risk management sort of perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely it's kind of not the fun at the party. But I kind of feel like it's like the tequila. It's like really difficult to get down, but with a little bit of lemon and salt. Vanessa, you're smiling, so you've clearly done a lot of that. So yeah, I think that's, look, I've seen it being implemented in a lot of our companies that we represent and work with closely. I understand the paperwork and everything, but I just think because we're not a police state, it is up to us to see the value in it as business owners. We've got to look for the value in it in order to make the numbers count, because you do spend a lot of expense getting to that stage of compliance and then maintaining it.
Yeah.
But Vanessa, Donnie had a question, and I'm not sure, I think this might be for Gordon. Just a query, he was saying that all members in the industry registered with RMA and not directly with COIDA. Are all members in the industry registered with RMA and not directly with COIDA?
Hi, Brad. No, it's not a requirement to register with the RMA. You can register directly. It's just that the RMA does provide that service, but it's not compulsory to do that.
Okay, perfect. And then Donnie was just saying, also, please don't forget tax year ending 28 February 2026 to the RMA by 31st of March. Thank you so much, Donnie, for that. Vanessa, we're halfway in already.
Jump a little bit, because I actually want to get into, and everyone can read this, you can do your AI searches, you can Google King 5, whatever. But I want to actually jump to, we know our
But you are
penalties.
available, Vanessa, for any members that have got queries.
100%, yeah.
Okay.
So I
Cool.
want
So we'll
to,
just share your
I think
details.
this is the message where where I think we really need to actually get to is that paradigm shift from the very traditional siloed based approach. And this is what we've sort of been alluding to already, where we have our safety department, our safety officers. We're very reactive in our response to incidents. We have our audits and inspections. And I mean, I years ago worked at Alexander Forbes and in our risk control team, and we did extensive audits of the insured clients from a risk control perspective. But it was very easy to just get through it as a tick box exercise, and we've really got to move beyond that. And that's part of what I was saying earlier, is understanding the why and having that awareness and that culture that we want to comply because it keeps us safe. We want to comply because it makes our organizations more efficient. We're much more sort of robust in managing our risks. And we need to try and articulate that sort of, we talk about an ROI, but your return on investment, but it's too jargony. But understanding that value of why we have to actually do this, that is absolutely key. And building it together, and as I said, integrating it in. Occupational health and safety needs to be part of our strategic processes, and especially as we see with the statistics, and maybe that's also sell the shock value to our leadership to make them wake up to how important compliance is. Using these statistics and got it first time, and shock stories to encourage our employees also to be understand their controls and working with them. And then you mentioned our KPIs and moving to a more leading indicator approach, as opposed to just always waiting for the bad stuff to happen and learning from that. Having those sort of, we're measuring, we've got different metrics and performance measures in place, starting to use those as an early warning system, and to actually give us this sort of leading view of if we are moving into a particularly risky situation, and really making it living. As I said, our ISO systems and our information management systems can really be, and I must say you were very brave talking about a ball ache on a webinar, but anyway. I think if you were being interviewed by Jeremy Maggs, he would have had something to say. But
I'm sure.
Our information management system, our processes, our reporting, our risk registers, the information that we're sharing, the learnings, etc. We really will have an incredible struggle if we're not actually getting that right. I'm not going to talk about the ISO and ISO 45000. That's also, as much as these are standards to help us, they can't get the better of us. We do still need to make sure that we're understanding why, and it is actually adding value. And I think where to sort of bring the two sides together, where we've got our risk management, our very proactive view. Your definition of a risk is the effect of uncertainty on our objectives. So making sure that we are looking ahead at that uncertainty. We know where we've got areas of non-compliance. We know where we've got areas of poor performance, fraud, corruption, etc. But looking forward now, what uncertainty are we facing? And there's the risk, the downside, as well as the opportunity side. Where are there opportunities for us for growth? Where benefit, greater efficiencies, etc. That can also help. It's not just about fighting the fires and reducing the losses. It's also about harnessing that opportunity. And that's really what, from the risk management perspective, gives us that forward-looking view. And we talk about anticipatory thinking. What can happen? And hopefully, by having that anticipatory thinking, we will start to then realize the importance of compliance and of the rules we have, of the need for inspections, the need for certain standards to be set, as much as it costs us, because it is going to protect our people. We're not going to have buildings collapsing, etc.
So Vanessa, sorry, would you mind
Yeah.
if I jump in for a sec?
No, go for it.
So I think this is probably, in my view, and I'm not sure what you think, probably the most important slide, because this is how we kind of this is our integration model that we need to be focusing on as business, correct?
Yeah.
So through this process of, focusing on integration and bringing in risk, bringing in health and safety, and, aligning this to strategy, if I'm stuck as a business owner, I can reach out to you and you can guide us through this. Is that
Yes.
something that you can do?
Yes.
The reason why I keep asking is because I think a lot of us in the room sit and sometimes we know our businesses really well and we know what we're doing, but sometimes we're so traditional, or we're such traditionalists, or we've been doing it for so long that we actually don't know how to do this. This looks very easy. It's 3 blocks and it's a couple of wording, but when you sit down, it's not, and you really do need support. So I'm glad that you guys are there, and I think Gordon's there. For any members that are sitting in this room that have questions, please reach out.
Yeah.
We would rather help you and support you on this journey, because having a kind of an integrated model is going to take your business to the next level.
Yeah.
And it's not going to, one, open you up to inspectors coming in and really disrupting your business, and two, obviously supporting human life that's in your space, and it takes your business to the next level. It's always refreshing to see business owners wanting to do that. Vanessa, what is your thoughts?
So exactly, and as you said, it's easy to look at 3 blocks, but it is so difficult to try and get it right, because there's cultural factors, there's resource constraints, there's capacity constraints, there's the silo mentality, we're always in tactical firefighting mode because we don't have time to get the strategic focus. So there's all of that makes this incredibly difficult. And I think as consultants, we can talk this and we can build it, and then we leave and give you our invoice. We're not there trying to build the culture and fight with the difficult exco members that don't want to adopt it, or whatever we might be struggling with. And everyone's got their different struggles. And again, like we see there, combined assurance, which is also a big flavor of the time, is bringing together all of our assurance providers. And I'll actually jump to the next slide on that, because assurance is so important to bring part of the integration that we have, because typically when we think of assurance, we think of internal audit or external audit, our inspectors, etc. But it's really, the key is these first and second lines, and getting management involved, and then the actual risk management function, health and safety function, etc. But this first line here is one of the most critical, because they're at the coalface, they're working with the controls that we have in place, they're dealing with the issues, they're the risk owners, and incredibly important there to get that level as a sort of first line going. And we're not just waiting for internal audit or external audit to pick things up. In a hockey game, you can't just wait for the goalie to pick up the ball. It's the entire team, right from your attackers. So
100%.
we need to really make sure that from a combined assurance, whether you've got a model or not, that our first line of management, our people who are working with the controls, working with the processes, they understand the importance of them, and they are providing that sort of assurance as we're operating. And if a policy doesn't make sense, or a SOP doesn't make sense, fix it, because the next thing someone starts to do that process, they don't understand the process, and an injury happens. So really just appreciating and not waiting for internal audit to pick up the issue, or external audit.
I like how you've put your external assurance. You're not forcing it. It's seen as basically that, an assurance that you're on the right track and that you are compliant and you're aligned. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
instead of waiting to be inspected and hoping for the best, you're actually using it as rather as an insurance level that you are running a world-class business.
Yeah. And so when we actually talk about insurance as a discipline, the fifth line, according to King 5, because so King 5 has sort of specifically mentioned the governing body. So our board essentially becomes that fifth line of assurance, that they are the ultimate accountability. And obviously EXCO, according to governance requirements, is the mandatory sort of executor of what the company needs to achieve. So the board has delegated that function to EXCO or senior management, which gives them accountability to the board as well. So even with all of these different assurance providers, our leadership need to understand that they are ultimately accountable. And we've seen businesses close because of significant non-compliance. We've seen boards all being taken to court because of significant non-compliance, and they need to understand that as well. So it's not just our operating levels, it's right up to the top, you know, and they often, we'll see boards sitting in their nice boardroom, you know, fancy lunch, fancy cars, fancy whatever, in their board meetings, and they don't actually understand the ramifications completely of if there is a significant issue, particularly if there's negligence involved, like we saw with the George incident. So I'm going to jump. Okay, bow ties is something we can also
Chairman, I hope we're not stressing you out by just saying we've got an.
No, don't worry.
We appreciate this. I've read through this. I've done a bit of work around it. It's really, really nicely put together. And whoever's going to read this afterwards, it's simple, but also complex at the same time. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for that.
No, it's all good. So I'm just going to jump to, you know, just elevating it to the culture component, that moving, like we say, from a compliance culture to proactive leadership. And that also needs to be throughout all levels of the organization, right from the board. As I said, they've got a governance requirement according to King 5, according to Companies Act, according to various pieces of legislation, right through our EXCO and our leadership, our line management, and as I said, the guys at the coalface, and then all employees. And what's also very important there, our employees do have their obligation, and we always teach our children, you have rights and obligations. You have your obligation to work safely, to follow procedures, follow the rules, etc. But there is that right to refuse unsafe work. And I think a lot of people don't always understand that. There's a fear of losing your job or whatever it might be. But I think there's a lot of businesses that are not compliant enough. They're not, they don't have this proactive sort of culture. And often our employees are not really aware of what their rights actually are as well. So very, very important to build that sort of safety culture, the leadership culture, and that we are just being, I'm just going to click to the next one. Yeah, we have a maturity model, but again, just to the culture, having that visible leadership, that we are able to differentiate, as it says there, between honest mistakes and reckless conduct. And again, that human error that we know happens, but where is there an unsafe environment that actually needs to be reported as well, including our employees in our processes and participating. They need to appreciate the controls that we have in place to keep them safe, appreciate the controls that we have from a proactive risk management perspective, that they you know, that everybody understands why we're doing what we're doing. And hopefully that gets the message that it's not just an extra initiative that does seem to be burdensome. It's part of our processes. Us as a if you're a safety function or if you are a risk management function, see yourself as partnering with the business, that we're helping, we're aiding. We're not actually trying to just overload the organization. And then something that from a knowledge management and becoming a learning organization is incredibly important is learning from the incidents that happen and learning from the successes that happen as well. We'll do our incident investigations, but how often do we actually investigate the causes of our successes and what's worked well? Where have we overcome a particular issue? Or where have we had a project that's been implemented particularly well, learning from those successes as well as the failures, learning from the industry. You know, we've got bodies like yourselves, like IRMSA, you know, whatever, you know, there's so many different associations that we can learn from in our particular industries. There's so much information available out there, you know, when particular industry issues arise, and just really becoming a learning organization, which then also helps us to continually improve as well, that understanding where our gaps are and what we actually need to do to get better, you know, better from a occupational health and safety perspective. But also from a risk management perspective. And, you know, for those who are new to the risk management concepts, and I mean, we have sort of brushed, this hasn't been a risk management 101 exercise, but once you start reading in it, you know, there is so much, and it's such a rich, you know, we actually call it the art of risk management, because there's so much, to it. There's so many sort of innuendos, there's so many cultural aspects, there's so many different, you know, none of it's black and white, and it's just an incredible concept and an incredible sort of industry to actually be in, that we get excited when we get to do presentations like this, because health and safety is now thinking, we need to be working with risk management, you know, financial management, you know, various other sort of disciplines, where they start to see that actually risk management has got a place, and it touches all, because our risks in our organizations are so interconnected. You know, if we have a health and safety incident, it has a financial impact, it has a legal impact, it has a reputation impact. And it's not just that the health and safety department is involved. There's so many different sort of touch points, that really is incredibly important.
I had a staff member once, very long time ago, and we suggested doing a suggestion system, but this is a little bit left field. It was with our clients. And the reaction from the staff member is like, why would you put this out there? You're like upsetting the apple cart. Opening up for suggestions is opening yourself up for, like, you know, a camel, like a horse, you know, drawn by a committee is a camel. So, but that's not the point. The point of this is that if you bring your workers in, if you create a culture where risk, health and safety work closely together in a sense of mitigation, that's going to contribute to your business's success and growth. And that is the message that I think we need to get out there, is really important. We've got 10 minutes left. And if there's anybody out there that wants to ask questions or comments, or we have put Vanessa's details in. Sorry, Vanessa, we've actually put your details in the chat. I hope we were allowed to do that.
All good.
I just want to highlight that Vanessa does do a lot of training. And that means that she's a very patient person. And she means that not really. Not really. Are you mother? Do you get upset quickly?
I'm moms. But if you met my youngest, you'd understand why.
So closing thoughts for the next 10 minutes before we close and wrap up. So I would need about 2 minutes for that. For the next 8 minutes, what would you like to take us through?
No, so I think just some questions there that are on the screen, and almost, you know, when you read through the slides, the maturity analysis and business continuity, etc., is just do a self-assessment, almost just mentally, of, you know, are we treating health and safety just as a compliance requirement and ticking the box, or is it actually part of our strategic risk thinking? How well is our board engaged? I mean, we go into clients where the boards, I don't even know why they're board members, because they're just so disinvested in the organization. And it's really just for their own sort of benefit. But there's others that are so engaged and so, it's beyond compliance, it's beyond governance, that they really do want the best for the organization. And it goes for leadership teams as well. Are we looking at our risks? Are we looking at these leading indicators? Have we got supporting frameworks and processes that are part of how we do business, not just seen as an extra function? So, I'm sure everyone represented here is different, different organizations, different sort of roles and so on. But we really ultimately should all have a sort of risk management component to our way of doing our job, that we're thinking proactively, we're thinking with an anticipatory, what can go wrong, what are some of the issues that we're facing, and what do we need to do about it? So in real layman's terms, as a closing point, is what can go wrong and how can we prevent it from going wrong? It's, if we've got problems, how do we fix them, and how do we prevent stuff happening in the future? So yeah, that's
some good questions. So Vanessa, I've got another question for you. You studied in KZN.
I did.
Did you ever go to Johnny's Rotties over the hill?
Brad, I did go to Johnny's Rotties, and I'll also tell you that when I was at university, we drove down. So I was at Pietermaritzburg University. My parents were living in Kloof, and didn't tell them, and just rocked up at Kings Park Rugby. Hi, Mom and Dad. But outside Johnny Rotties, your student cars are really clapped out. The handbrake broke, and
No way.
My friend's bakkie that we had driven down from Maritzburg in the back of the bakkie. This bakkie goes rolling down the hill. So that is my not so fond memory of Johnny's Rotties.
That's amazing. It's such a small world. Yeah. But Vanessa, I'm going to say thank you very much. I think this was really interesting. I know you had a lot to get through, and I know that this is a very chunky conversation to have in a presentation. But these sessions are not about fluff. I think we have very honest conversations around where we are as business owners here. And I think we're all humans sitting in this room. We're all worried about bottom line. We're worried about cash flow. We're worried about the war. As South Africans, we tend to worry about everybody else's issues because no one worries about ours. But I think this has actually been quite positive. It's given us an opportunity to look at this a little bit differently and to approach health and safety and alliance with risk incredibly differently, because we can't have the same mindset anymore. I think we have to shift in our thinking if we want to, survive in this market and survive in South Africa and in our industry. Vanessa, again, you do quite a bit of work around this. I think if I was any business owner in here and I had questions, I would definitely reach out to Vanessa. Just remember, Vanessa is giving up her time. So if you can just put it down into an email and then create a relationship there. And there is opportunities for you to bring on the team and work with them closely. Gordon's also available if you have questions, and he can redirect you to the right people as well. But guys, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. I know you guys don't do a lot of comments, but I look at the numbers always remain high in the room. So you're not leaving us to go and do something else at 3 o'clock, pick up kids or have a late lunch somewhere. But Gordon, that's us. Would you like to just close off with everyone? Is there anything else specifically you'd like to add?
Thanks very much, Brad. Thanks, Vanessa. Nothing further from my side other than to say thanks so much, both of you, for your time. Vanessa, very, very thorough and yeah, very, very useful. You've certainly given us a lot to think about. So yeah, really, really appreciate you giving up your time and sharing your expertise with us this afternoon. Many thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks,
Cheers,
Gordon.
everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Vanessa.
Bye.